Hello viewers, SniperWolf1001 here. Now if you guys haven't already heard, Capcom just recently finally revealed the release date for Alatreon. And it looks like we won't have to be waiting too much longer because on July 9th, pretty much a week from this video's upload, everybody will finally be able to experience Alatreon. Now this has me super excited because Alatreon is hands down one of my favorite monsters from Monster Hunter, and you know, I've been waiting for Alatreon to show up in a world like since before Iceborne, and he's finally coming, so I'm really excited for this. But with all that said, this video I wanted to do something a little bit different from what I usually do on my channel. I kind of wanted to do a bit of a discussion video as to my thoughts and my opinions on the series and what they could do after Alatreon's release in regards to DLC, additional monsters and content that could come to the game afterwards, and you know, stuff like that. So there are going to be three main points that I'm going to talk about in this video. The first point is going to be focused on gameplay, and that is more in respect to Alatreon's moveset based off of his old moveset and what we've seen so far in the trailers. The second point will be based on future content, you know, future DLC, monsters, the possible directions that they could take after Alatreon's release. And the third point will be based on merchandise, which is kind of more what my channel is focused on. So now jumping into the first point, and we're going to be talking about gameplay. Now, I kind of wanted to do a bit of a retrospective to Alatreon in 3U. So when I first got to fight Alatreon in that game, it was a really amazing experience. Like, it was, in my opinion, I think Alatreon is like the best monster in the series. He's very tough, and you know, he's very powerful because he controls 4 of the 5 different elements in the game. He has power over fire, lightning, ice, and dragon. The only element he doesn't use is water. And because he's if you guys follow up on the lore, Alatreon is elementally unstable, so a lot of these elements come out randomly, which is actually pretty interesting. Like, one minute he could hit you with a fireball, the next minute ice shards could be raining from the sky. You know, it's just like all of this stuff around Alatreon's powers is just really cool, and I really want to see how this is represented in Iceborne. Now, in 3U, I remember that Alatreon, in terms of his moves, I felt that his moves were just unbalanced in the sense that he had more moves of a certain element that he would than he would have of another element. And what I mean by that is that I feel that Alatreon had a lot more electric moves, or thunder moves, compared to his other ones. I feel like I think Alatreon had 4 different thunder moves. He had one move where he would drop a lightning bolt on your current position on the ground, and then he had another one where he would do the same move, but it would be a large AoE around the surrounding area, right? And then he would have another one where when he's floating in mid-air, he will do kind of like a lightning crash, where he'll kind of slam his claws into the ground, and then there'll be like a big lightning explosion, and then he'll do that multiple times. And then his fourth move would be one where, like, when he's hovering in midair, he'll do like a lightning dash or like a tackle, kind of similar to Fulgur Anjanath when he's enraged and he does his little lightning tackle. In terms of ice moves, I'm pretty sure Alatreon had only 3 ice moves. He had one move where when he's on the ground, he shoots out various ice crystals, very large ice crystals at the ground, which kind of stick at the ground. And then he had another one where he hovers very slowly while moving forward, and he kind of sprays his ice breath around the area. Very similar to what Teostra does, where Teostra also hovers and kind of does like his his fire breath in the area in front of him. So, you know, he has that, and then he also has like another move where he'll fly off into the distance to where you can't really hit him, and then he'll drop a bunch of ice crystals from the sky down onto the field. So another AoE attack similar to his lightning AoE, but this one has way larger reach, right? And then for dragon attacks, I remember he had 2 different dragon attacks. He had like a dragon claw swipe, and then on the ground he had a dragon charge attack. And then for fire attacks, I think he only had 1 fire attack, if I remember correctly. And it was like a fire projectile. He pretty much shoots a fireball where it hits the ground and it creates a giant flaming tornado, which was pretty cool. So I definitely feel that Alatreon was a bit more electric-oriented in the original game, so it'll be interesting to see if they balance that more in Iceborne, to where he has more of like an equal moveset throughout the various elements. And yeah, that will be a very interesting thing to see, because Alatreon has a very large move pool, if 3U is anything to go off of, so it'll be interesting to really see how they do the moves in Iceborne. Now, when it comes to some of the moves that we've already seen in regards to the changes, based off of the 2 trailers we've seen so far, you know, we've seen Alatreon's ice move, like one of his ice moves, in the more recent trailer, where he shoots out ice crystals in almost like a fan arc, which is kind of interesting. And then we've seen a couple of his fire attacks, which seem to be a bunch of large AoEs, but, you know, so far, we haven't even scratched the surface as to what Alatreon can do. Like, everything has just been very, very small teasers of his abilities. So I'm really interested in seeing how they're going to change up his moves from the original game, if there are going to be any moves that they keep the same, or if his entire moveset is going to be completely redone. That'll be really interesting to see. Another thing that I think that would be interesting to think about is that we all know that Alatreon is going to have a super move in this game. So how are they going to do that super move, right? Because of Alatreon's various elements. Are they going to do a super move where maybe all of his elements intervene into one fantastic explosion or something, maybe something akin to, you know, Lunostra's super move, or, you know, something like Raging Brachydios or something like that on that level? Will they do something like that? Or will they do something more dynamic where, depending on what elemental mode that Alatreon is in, maybe he has different super moves for each element. So maybe he has like an ice super move, a fire super move, a thunder super move, or a dragon super move, right? That'll be interesting. They've never done that before in Iceborne yet, so I think that would be really cool. Honestly, I think both options yield to some really interesting results, but I think I would prefer if they did the super move depending on what element he's in, because that will just be very different, very unique. It'd be very different to the formula, and I think that would be really cool, because, like, again, like, the thing with Alatreons, you can't really prepare with elemental resistances, since he pretty much does almost all the elements anyway. So, you know, depending on what your armor is set up like, if he does a super move that, you know, is not good for your element, you know, that could kind of trip you up a little bit. So I think that would be a little exciting. But, you know, if they do the first method where they decide to just combine all the elements together, I wonder how exactly they're going to do the damage calculations for that, right? Because how are they going to delegate, you know, how much elemental damage is this doing for, you know, how much ice damage are you taking, how much thunder damage are you taking, how much dragon damage are you taking, right? So that'll be really interesting to think about. I really want to see what his super moves are. Another thing that I thought was kind of interesting is how they're focusing more on, like, when we talk about the elemental changes, I like how they've been focusing on, like, the visuals and the sound effects in regards to Alatreon as well, too, because in the first trailer, we actually see when Alatreon goes into his fire mode, we actually see his scales will actually light up. It'll turn into that bright orangey, flamey color, right? And that's really interesting, because in 3U, when Alatreon would change moves, you wouldn't really have a visual identifier based off of just seeing energy around him. When he would go into his fire move in 3U, you would only see fire coming from his mouth, and, you know, like his electric form, you'll see electricity kind of surging around him, I guess. But I like the fact that they're going to great lengths to emphasize his visual changes even more. You know, because, like, we've seen it in the teaser trailers, him kind of cycling through his different elements. You know, of course, the fire one where his body lights up orange. You know, it'll be cool if we see, like, an ice one where he kind of gets, like, ice armor, almost kind of similar to Velkhana, but, like, his body starts glowing, like, almost like a kind of whitish blue type of look. And then, of course, we've already seen him go into his dragon form, where, you know, he's kind of like, he has more of like a steel, like silver aesthetic with like the dragon energy surging around him. So that's really interesting. And of course, like when it comes to the sound effects, I think what they've been doing with the sound effects and like how it shows, and the environmental effects as well too, which is one thing that I really love about Monster Hunter World, is just how they've been shaping the monsters and how the monsters affect the world around them and how the world also affects the monsters. The way that they've been showing Alatreon do his elemental shifts in the trailers just looks amazing, because you see that he'll shift into his ice form, and then you see the entire like area will completely change. You'll see like ice over the area. Like when he goes into his fire form, you'll see flames all over the place. I think that's super cool, and if we see more of that once Alatreon is finally revealed, that has me ecstatic. Like that is just really cool. That's a lot of attention to detail right there. Another thing in regards to gameplay is more in the sound department. Alatreon's battle theme is easily one of my favorite themes from 3U. I love the fact that his theme, they did a really good job capturing the essence of chaos in Alatreon's battle theme, because there were like his like the way that the song progresses, it's almost in a very erratic manner, right? Like there was a lot of constant like tempo and tempo shifts, and it almost feels kind of random, but it's done in a very good way to where it doesn't sound like noise. It sounds melodic, but it sounds melodic in a very chaotic way. So I thought that, like I really liked it for that. And it'd be really interesting to see how they actually remix that for Iceborne, and see if it'd be interesting to see if that actually holds up well to the original, even down to like the smaller details to his music, because like there were certain things in Alatreon's theme where he had really weird sound effects. Like there was one sound effect where it's like a very high pitched, almost kind of squealing sound that would just play almost like it doesn't play randomly, but it happens during like weird sections of the song which almost sound kind of creepy when you listen to it. But that just added more to my love of that theme, and I really hope that they capture that really well in Iceborne, right? So that pretty much covers everything that I want to talk about in regards to gameplay. So on to part 2 to talk about possible future DLC monsters. So starting with Alatreon. When I first heard that Alatreon was confirmed for the game, the one thing that I was always wondering was, would they introduce a stronger monster than Alatreon? So for those of us who follow the lore, we all know that Alatreon is the very first Black Dragon to be introduced to Monster Hunter World and to that game's universe, right? And that is actually very significant because Black Dragons, they're pretty much in a league of their own. Elder Dragons can't really hold a candle to Black Dragons. Black Dragons are just ridiculously powerful, they're very highly intelligent, and they're super aggressive. So when we just take a look at some of the Black Dragons, and there's not really that many of them, but for the ones that I'm familiar with, we have Alatreon, who is, I think, considered to be the weakest of the Black Dragons. Then we have Dire Moralis, then we have Fatalis, and then the different Fatalis variants. So we look at the list, and then, we have Dire Moralis. I personally don't think that Dire Moralis will show up in the game, just because I feel that it'll be way too much work for Capcom to implement Dire Moralis, to get his huge model, and to get all these mechanics going. Like, I just don't see that happening. As much as I love Dire Moralis, I just think that hoping for him to be in the game is just is a little bit misguided. But that kind of lends itself over to Fatalis now, and that's just kind of interesting because, like, for someone like myself who, who's played a few of the games, or even for somebody else who, maybe Monster Hunter World was like their first game, it was their introduction to the series, like, a lot of us have interacted with other players online, others who have played a lot of the older games, fought against a lot of the older monsters, and Fatalis gets brought up a lot, and we hear a lot of crazy stuff about Fatalis. We all hear the legends, but, we don't have any experience to really go off of, right? So that's why it would be kind of interesting to see Fatalis possibly make an appearance as a DLC monster somewhere down the line for Iceborne. And yeah, for me, like, the only games that I've played, like, I've played a lot of 3U and a lot of Monster Hunter World. For like I played a tiny bit of 4U, but I kind of stopped just because like I didn't really like the controls on 3DS, and I played a little bit of Gen Ultimate, but I kind of stopped because I was playing Monster Hunter World at the time. So like really the only games I really put a lot of hours into was 3U and Monster Hunter World. So, and those games didn't have Fatalis in them. So that's why I think it would be interesting. And on top of that, because of Alatreon's introduction, I think that he will, like, him being in the game will very drastically and very significantly shake up Monster Hunter World's ecosystem, in that it opens up a whole world of possibilities as to what can come next, right, since this is our first Black Dragon. So I think that that's actually pretty interesting, and yeah, Fatalis coming to the game so that we can all experience it, experience that monster as a community, I think would be really interesting, especially if he turns out to be like the last monster that shows up as DLC for Iceborne. I think that would be really cool. But one trend that I do see them doing right now is they seem to be doing a lot of variants now for their DLC, and I'm honestly not against the variants. I think the variants are pretty cool. Especially, and I'm guessing you guys have seen the teaser at the end of the release date reveal trailer, where, you know, they teased a Barioth, like a new variant of Barioth, and yeah, when I saw that, like, I was like, this is Barioth, but I'm not familiar with this version of Barioth, right? Because the only Barioths that I fought was regular Barioth and Sand Barioth, right? So this was kind of interesting when I saw this, and honestly, like, I'm about it, because, like, I like Barioth. I think Barioth is a really fun monster, and honestly, more Barioth is always a good thing in my opinion, right? But yeah, when it comes to variants, there's definitely like a long list of like variants and other monsters that I would like to see show up in Monster Hunter, in Iceborne sometime down the line. The one at the very top of my list right now is Lucent Nargacuga. And Lucent Nargacuga, like, I love fighting that monster. Like, honestly, like, some people complain about, you know, Barioth and, like, Nargacuga. Some people complain that, oh, you know, they jump around too much, oh, they're hard to hit. Honestly, I love that stuff. Like, I find that fighting monsters like that to be very exhilarating. Like, any monsters like Barioth, Nargacuga, Adogeron, Tobi-Kadachi, and to a lesser extent Zinogre, I feel that fighting monsters like that, very fast, agile monsters, to be just very exhilarating and just a very, just very fun, because it just keeps you on your toes, right? And Lucent Nargacuga, when I first fought him in 3U, was such an amazing experience, because it was a very tough battle, because you pretty much take a Nargacuga, like, you beef him up a lot, so he's a lot stronger, but then, and he's, you know, Nargacuga is very fast, very agile, but now he's invisible. So that just really increases the threat level on that monster now at that point, because now you're kind of like, you're really on your toes at that point. And I think on top of that too, he had like I think he could shoot poison projectiles out of his tail as well too, which also made that fight pretty tough. So yeah, like, Lucent Nargacuga, I would really love to see show up in Monster Hunter World. And another thing too, when it comes to the variants, I honestly think that the path that they're taking with the variants to be a very healthy path. The reason why is because in regards to the weapons and the armor, I feel that the variants kind of helps to alleviate some of the decisions that they made with Iceborne when it first released. Weapon-wise, because, you know, for someone like me as a dual blade user, I was pretty upset when I fought Brachydios, and I ended up finding that Brachydios' dual blades were just a pair of drumsticks, like ugly drumsticks, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people were upset with that. So the thing that was cool with that was that they released Raging Brachydios later on, and they actually brought back the design, the original dual blade design, and actually made it look a little bit cooler. So, you know, that's cool, pretty cool. And even on top of that, even with the armor, like, the one trend with Monster Hunter World Iceborne, like when Iceborne first came out, was that the newer monsters, the armor seemed to all be like high rank versions of the monster's armor, which I generally prefer a lot of the G rank armor, especially when it came to Zinogre, because I really like Zinogre's G rank armor, where, you know, you have that full, like, almost like metal armor that kind of makes you look like a wolf. You know, you have like these neon lights all over you. You have these claws and stuff. Like it was just such a cool looking armor set. And like the high rank set looks good, but like I don't think it looks as good as the G rank set, right? And that was a cool thing about Stygian Zinogre being introduced to the game, because Stygian Zinogre's alpha set was pretty much the G rank armor set there, right? So it was pretty cool how that ended up coming through Stygian Zinogre, right? And with Lucent Nargacuga, again, same thing with the weapons. With Nargacuga, for some reason, they didn't bring back the original dual blade weapon model for Nargacuga, which is just weird, because you'd think that Nargacuga would be the monster to represent dual bladers, right? Because they're like, it's like the very fast, agile monster. You know, a lot of the armor is focused around evasion and stuff like that. So you'd think that dual bladers would kind of get a bit of priority in that regard, but we ended up not getting the Nargacuga weapons for some weird reason, right? So I'm hoping that if Lucent Nargacuga becomes a possibility, that, you know, we end up getting the dual blades for that, right? So personally, I think that the variants are a pretty healthy decision that they're doing right now, especially since the variants are very different from their originals. I think that's really cool, and I really look forward to fighting this new Barioth. Now, onto the topic of merchandise. I feel like Capcom have definitely been doing a good job with a lot of the Monster Hunter collectibles out there on the market, especially when it comes down to like small things like the keychains. Now, if you guys have watched my keychain unboxings that I've done, prior to those, I've never really been a big fan of keychains, but after collecting a few of those, I'm fully on board with them now, because Capcom have done such a good job modeling those keychains. They look incredible in person, you know, and just having these keychains of the various icons, having that like icon artwork is just really nice for display purposes. They just look so good. So like at this point, I'm like, Capcom, throw all your keychains at me. I want them. I'm gonna keep them, right? So I think like all that stuff is really cool. And on top of that too, like Capcom has another Iceborne keychain pack that's going to be coming out later this year. It's actually a Volume 3 Iceborne pack, and I'm actually super excited for that because Alatreon finally has an icon now. Prior to this, Alatreon, he never really had an icon, it was just a question mark, but I'm so happy that now with Iceborne, some monsters that didn't have icons before are finally getting their own unique visualized icon, which is so cool, and Alatreon's looks really good as well too. So I'm really excited for this pack because I really want that Alatreon keychain. It also comes with a few other monsters that I don't believe they've revealed in keychain form before, but also talking about that, I feel that they're definitely going to keep this keychain Iceborne trend going as long as the DLC keeps rolling out. Just because with this Volume 3 pack, it actually didn't come with a lot of the monsters that I was expecting it to come with. Of course, it had a few, because this pack, it actually comes with Shar Ishvalda, Blackveil Valhazak, Skardian Garuga, Alatreon, and I think Seething Basiljuice is in there as well, and then Furious Rajang. But the other ones are Brute Tigrax, Lavasioth, Black Diablos, and a Savage Deviljho, which I thought to be really weird, but then I was also like, okay, they're definitely doing another keychain pack down the line, right? Because when I saw Furious Rajang, I'm like, where's Raging Brachydios? I originally thought that this pack was going to come with, you know, Stygian Zinogre, Safi Jiva, Raging Brachydios, you know, even Rudener Gigante, because I don't think he's had a keychain yet. And of course, like, I thought that Blackveil Valhazak and Skardian Garuga were going to get theirs, which they of course did. But yeah, some of those other ones didn't really show up. So I'm like, okay, they're definitely holding those off for another pack down the line. But yeah, like, these packs, definitely really cool, and I'm really excited for that. In regards to the models, I think talking about the Capcom Figure Builder model series, I really like that line of models. In terms of the scale is very nice on them. Like, a lot of those models are very sizable, and I'm talking about like the large Figure Builder ones, because I know that there's actually two different series. There's like smaller ones where they have a lot of Iceborne monsters, and then there's the larger ones, right? I think the larger ones are really nice, and you know, I feel like I hope that Capcom kind of rides out, you know, they keep riding the Iceborne hype train in regards to their models now, because I believe that in regards to the large figure builder models, I think Nergigante is the first Monster Hunter World monster that's shown up in model form through that line. So I think that's really exciting, and hopefully that means that, you know, maybe an Alatreon will show up as a model at some point, right? Because I think that, you know, Alatreon, for me personally, if Alatreon is made in figure form to the same scale as that Nergigante model, that will just be incredible. Because I think that will just be my favorite Monster Hunter model, like like that I've ever collected. Right? That'll just be so cool. So I hope that Capcom keeps riding the Iceborne hype train with the merchandise and their models. I think this is definitely a very good direction to take it. Especially with Nergigante. They just released Nergigante, and I've actually done a review on that Nergigante model a few days ago. They're also releasing an alternate version of Nergigante later this year, where it's Arch-Tempered Nergigante. So it's pretty much just a recolor. But yeah, that is going to be coming out later this year. So, you know, a lot of that stuff is cool. There's definitely a bright future ahead when it comes to like the Monster Hunter merchandise, which is really cool, because I don't really think that Monster Hunter merchandise prior to this was very prolific. But, you know, I'm really liking the way that things are turning out. And on top of that too, you know, there's 2 more models from I think it's a different company, where they're actually posable monsters now. There's one model of Nargacuga and one of Rathalos, where you can the models actually have some articulation. You can move the tails around, you can put them in various different poses, and they actually, visually, they look really good. When I saw the pictures of Nargacuga online, when I looked at the black and how they detailed like the black looking fur on it, I thought that looked really cool. And even Rathalos, I thought Rathalos looked pretty great too. So, you know, a lot of this stuff that's been coming out lately, I think, is breathing a lot of life into the Monster Hunter merchandise scene, which is really cool, and I'm fully about that. So that's pretty much gonna bring this video to a close. It's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in regards to my thoughts on the direction that they can be taking with Monster Hunter, in both like the gameplay, the DLC, and the merchandise aspect. You know, that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in regards to that stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys found it informative. There's definitely going to be a lot more figure reviews and unboxings coming in the future, because I have a lot of stuff coming later on this year. So I hope you guys stay tuned for all of that. But, you know, with all that said, I hope you guys stay safe. I hope you guys have a good night or good day, depending on where you are, and I will see you all later.